They weren't always like this. That's what you keep thinking, right? That at the beginning there was something real. Something that felt like finally being seen. They paid attention in a way no one else ever had. They were magnetic. They knew exactly what to say. And then, slowly, it started costing you things. Your confidence, your friendships, your ability to trust what you're feeling, your sense of whether the problem is them or you. And here's the part nobody talks about. You're not stupid. You didn't miss the red flags out of ignorance. You missed them because of something that was built into you long before they showed up. Something that made you the perfect match for exactly this kind of person. And that's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to understand it. Let's talk about what people pleasers are actually running on. Because this isn't about being nice. Nice is a choice. What people pleasers have is something older than choice. It's a nervous system that was trained to read other people's emotional states as a survival priority. You learned to feel the temperature of a room before you were old enough to name it. You knew when someone was about to get angry. You knew when silence meant something was wrong. You calibrated constantly, adjusting, softening, shrinking, to keep things stable. And that skill, in a normal adult relationship, it just makes you thoughtful, perceptive, easy to be around. But narcissists aren't looking for a partner, they're looking for a mirror. Psychologist Dr. Craig Machen describes narcissism not as a love of self, but as an addiction to feeling special. Narcissists don't actually have a stable inner self. That's the clinical reality underneath the confidence. There's a hollow space where a secure identity should be, and what fills it? The reactions of people around them, admiration, compliance, someone who makes them feel exceptional, a people pleaser, almost by design, does exactly that. You read their moods, you adjust, you absorb their discomfort before it becomes conflict. You celebrate them, you make excuses for them. You question yourself instead of questioning them. From the outside, it looks like love. From a psychological perspective, it's a perfect fit between someone who's addicted to supply and someone who's been trained to provide it. And here's where it gets genuinely dark, because this fit feels familiar. Not just comfortable. Familiar, like home, that feeling of familiarity. That's not chemistry, that's recognition. Your nervous system has been here before. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk describes how early relational wounds create templates, blueprints, not conscious beliefs, but somatic expectations about how relationships feel. If you grew up with a parent who was unpredictable, loving 1 hour, cold the next, present and then gone, you didn't form a belief that relationships are unstable. You formed a felt sense that love and uncertainty belong together. You learned to work for love, to earn it, to prove yourself in the waiting. So when a narcissist enters and love feels like a performance review, when their warmth is something you have to maintain, when their approval is always just out of reach, your nervous system doesn't sound an alarm. It recognizes the pattern, and it leans in. A 2015 study found that individuals high in anxious attachment are statistically more likely to be attracted to narcissistic partners, not despite their radar, because of it. The hot and cold behavior, the intensity followed by withdrawal, the way the narcissist's approval feels like sunlight when you finally get it. That doesn't feel wrong to someone with an anxious attachment template. It feels like love with stakes, which is what love always felt like. This is not about being broken. It's about a system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when you're in this cycle. Narcissists, almost universally, operate on what researchers call intermittent reinforcement. Unpredictable reward, sometimes warm, sometimes cutting. No consistent pattern you can decode. And your dopamine system was not built for consistency. It was built for prediction and reward. When the reward is guaranteed, when love is stable and constant, dopamine activity actually decreases over time. That's just habituation. But when the reward is intermittent, when you can't predict it, dopamine spikes every single time. This is the same mechanism at work in gambling addiction. the same circuitry. A 2010 study showed that dopamine neurons fire maximally not when the reward arrives, but when the reward is uncertain. The anticipation of maybe is neurologically more powerful than the certainty of yes. So, when a narcissist goes cold and then comes back, when they pull away and then love bomb, every return feels like a hit. A genuinely neurochemical hit. Your brain floods with dopamine and oxytocin, and for a moment, everything feels resolved, confirmed, worth it. That's why you stayed longer than you should have. That's why you went back. It wasn't weakness. It was your brain, running its most powerful reward circuitry on exactly the input designed to trigger it. But here's what that pendulum costs long-term. The amygdala, your threat detection system, stays in a constant low-grade activation. When you're in a relationship built on unpredictability, it's always scanning, always braced. Dr. van der Kolk's research shows that chronic hypervigilance literally rewires the brain's baseline. It changes what feels normal. Calm starts to feel wrong. Quiet starts to feel suspicious. You stop being able to trust peace, which means that when a genuinely healthy person shows up, patient, consistent, emotionally available, they feel boring, flat, like something is missing. What's missing is the spike, and that's the trap. So, if the attraction is wired this deep, if it's nervous system, attachment template, and dopamine chemistry all at once, what do you actually do with that? I'm not going to tell you to make a list of red flags and check it on the first date. You've probably done that. Knowing what a narcissist looks like doesn't stop the pull. What changes the pull is changing what the nervous system is calibrated to expect. And that starts with an uncomfortable question. What would a stable relationship actually feel like in your body? Because for a lot of people who've been in this cycle, stable feels like nothing. Like absence. Like waiting for the other shoe. Like you haven't earned it yet. That feeling, that discomfort with being okay, is the actual target. That's where the work lives. Therapist and author Lindsay Gibson describes what she calls emotional self-reliance. The practice of building an internal relationship with yourself so solid that you stop requiring someone else's temperature to tell you whether you're safe. Practically, this means learning to notice when a relationship feels exciting specifically because it's uncertain. When your interest spikes with withdrawal, when you feel most engaged, when you're least secure. That spike, name it, out loud if you have to. That's the dopamine, that's the old template. That's not chemistry, that's a pattern I know. Second, practice what Makin calls the middle path of narcissism. A small, healthy degree of self-focus, not arrogance. Just the practice of asking what you want, what you feel, what you need, before asking what they need. Even 5 minutes of that daily changes the baseline. It sounds small. It isn't. And third, and this is the one nobody wants to hear, you may have to sit with the boredom of healthy for a while. Let yourself be disappointed by the flatness of someone who's simply consistent. Don't leave. Just let the flatness be. Because what you're actually doing, every time you stay in that flatness instead of chasing the spike, is retraining what safety feels like. You're updating the template. That process is slow. And nobody tells you how unglamorous it is. But it's the only way out of the pattern that doesn't just lead you back to the same door with a different face behind it. I know what you're probably feeling right now. Part of you wants to be angry. At them. At yourself. At the fact that something this painful was also this. Predictable, patterned, like you were always moving toward it. Feel that. And then know this. The fact that it was a pattern is the best news there is. Patterns can be interrupted. Wiring can be updated. Templates are not destiny. You weren't choosing this consciously. You were running a program you were handed when you were small, and now you know what the program is. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. The work isn't learning to spot narcissists. The work is becoming someone who doesn't need their validation to feel real. That's the whole thing. That's what detachment actually means. Leave something in the comments if this landed. Especially if you're in it right now and can't quite see the edges of it yet. That's the hardest place to be. And also exactly where this channel exists. Stay detached.